America's future is a series of choices. Our current state of slow motion national decline is a choice. It's important because it's like saying a giraffe is a thing that looks like a giraffe, or a coyote is a thing that looks like a coyote. It's called circular reasoning. You have to give me an actual definition. Would you support white-only dormitories?
Everybody has a choice.
So I think white-only and black-only anything is evil and wrong. That's why I hate critical theory and critical race theory, because when it's put in practice, you start to discriminate people based on race.
I started getting word just a couple of moments ago that Charlie Kirk
has been murdered today.
When people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When civilizations stop talking, civil war ensues. When you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to want to commit violence against that group. What we as a culture have to get back to is being able to have reasonable disagreement where violence is not an option.
Well, whether you're in Johannesburg or Jacksonville, you've probably heard the news. Charlie Kirk is dead. He was assassinated, a political assassination in the view of thousands, and thanks to the internet now, millions. I think what shook so many people on this story was not how it took place, but who it was. Charlie wasn't another commentator. He was one of the most recognizable conservative voices of a generation, and he spoke particularly to young people. He was loved by many, he was loathed by many, but he was never ignored.
We lost somebody that was willing to debate in good faith, was willing to challenge ideas, was never disrespectful, was willing to listen to any argument, whether pro or against his point of view. And the response was to kill him. Charlie was one of the friendliest debaters, in the sense that he was always respectful. He would always listen to an entire argument and then give his clap back. And it's quite concerning to see that when you can't beat somebody in debate, then you kill them. What does this say about society? What does it say when you kill somebody just because you don't agree with their viewpoints? What terrible message does that not send to the rest of the world? Charlie Kirk was a father. Charlie Kirk was a husband. And if you look at social media today, you'll see that there are many people that are devastated by what happened. But there are also a lot of people that are celebrating his death. It's strange how a movement that proclaims to be the most compassionate and shows the most empathy are the ones that are celebrating and making jokes about a father and a husband that was brutally murdered. Society is broken. It truly is. And what shocks me is the fact that he was the one that was actually the least controversial and the one that was willing to listen the most to the opposite view. And it just speaks volumes with regards to the response and also the act that was committed against him. I don't know where we go from here, but I do hope that it's peaceful. And I hope that this is a time for reflection for people on the left and the right to agree that violence is never the answer. Charlie Kirk used his mind and used his words to fight. But unfortunately, his life was taken away from him by a coward, by a movement that proclaims to be for people that don't have a voice and for people that have empathy and compassion. Well, everything that I've seen today from that side of the aisle has shown anything but compassion, overwhelmingly so. There are some people that have come out and condemned it and showed their respects, but the overwhelming majority is making a joke out of this and celebrating his death. I just don't understand how you can call yourself a compassionate human being, but then do these type of things. Charlie Kirk would have been a future president of the United States. He was 31 years old. 31 years old. He's written 5 books. He started Turning Point when he was 18. It was a movement that changed the Republican side in the United States. And it was a movement back to conservatism, where faith, flag, and freedom was the cornerstone. And unfortunately today, here we are. And that has been taken away by a coward and a movement that proclaims that they stand for the things that Charlie Kirk stood for. But yet, he's dead. And many people are celebrating his death. That can never be acceptable. Never. So, my thoughts and prayers go out to Charlie Kirk and his family. May God look after them and just provide them the strength and the guidance that they need right now.
So who was Charlie Kirk? Well, he was 18 when he co-founded Turning Point USA. He was just a kid from Illinois. No Ivy League degree, no silver spoon. What he did have was fire and a sharp mind. He tapped into frustration with universities that censored conservative thought, with a culture that seemed allergic to tradition. From small college stages to auditoriums and arenas, he built a movement. Not with polished lectures, but with confrontational questions. YouTube clips of him debating professors and students went viral, and if you loved or hated him, you couldn't help but watch.
My heart goes out to his wife, his family, his friends, and every single person who saw him as a leader, a mentor, and a brother in this fight for truth. Charlie stood for one thing: getting young people to think for themselves. He wanted us to ask questions, to challenge narratives, and to stop being sheep in a world that rewards silence. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. He showed up. And for that, he paid the ultimate price. This should shake every one of us, because it proves that telling the truth in today's society can cost you everything. But here's the thing. Charlie didn't die for us to stay quiet. He didn't die for us to retreat. In fact, he died as a reminder that courage is expensive, but cowardice costs even more. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Your fight lives on through us. Once again, condolences to your family.
By his 20s, he wasn't just a student activist anymore. He was advising presidents. He was helping to shape the language of an entire political movement. Charlie was never neutral. He championed American nationalism, the nuclear family, the right to bear arms, and the sanctity of the unborn. But controversy followed him everywhere. His critics accused him of oversimplifying complex issues, of weaponizing outrage, and of leaning into culture wars just for clicks. And yet, he thrived in that storm, because his philosophy was simple. Debate is better than silence. Say what you believe, loudly, and let the chips fall where they may.
The only thing I keep thinking about is how he may have woken up that day. It was a normal event, an event he had done so many times, across America. It's just another one. He would have kissed his wife, said I love you to his kids, not knowing that it was for the last time. He got to that event, smiles, ready to have a conversation, a debate. No one, not even him, could have predicted that on that day, this day, that would have happened. And as a father, that devastates me, because you never know when it's the last time you're going to say I love you to your kid or to your wife. That part really hurts me. What hurts me even more is how cruel some people can be. I don't care what excuse this person had to take a life, especially Charlie's, because Charlie did nothing wrong. He spoke uncomfortable truths for some, but he spoke the truth nonetheless, and that's the thing. The truth is going to piss you off. And that's the thing. First, the truth is going to piss you off, but it's going to set you free. And he changed and affected the lives of so many people. Whoever did this, I really hope they catch you. And you get, honestly, the death sentence would be mercy. This is a dark day in American history, for sure. My thoughts and prayers go out to the family, to the wife and kids. And as a fan of Charlie Kirk and as a fellow content creator, to all of those other content creators that are either on the center or leaning right, don't give up. Don't be silent. That is what they want. They tried to make an example out of Charlie. Shut up or else. Well, the worst thing we can do is to be quiet, because then we let them win. That's what they want. But now we should be louder than ever, spreading the truth and values that Charlie stood for. If we remain silent, then his death was in vain.
In a world where most leaders dance around words, Charlie grabbed them like a hammer. Sometimes he built with them, sometimes he smashed with them, but he never whispered. Here in South Africa, Charlie's name carried some weight too. He spoke about farm attacks, about land expropriation, about how radical leftist policies could erode private property and shred the social fabric of a nation.
Justice, the thing. So with correcting the justice, let's say, theoretically, it would be that we want some of this land to go back to Black South Africans. That's confiscation, right? No, you no longer own it. This group's going to own it. Therefore, you are punishing a grandkid for the sin of a grandfather. How is that morally defensible?
Exactly 24 years ago, the world was fundamentally altered. Al-Qaeda attacked New York and killed 3,000 people by flying planes into the Twin Towers and into the Pentagon. That violent assault on American liberty has created a ripple effect that is still felt today. There are certain moments in history when the world collectively gasps, when we realize that we are on the precipice of something new and something frightening. The bombing of Pearl Harbor, the assassination of Martin Luther King, and last night, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. There is something incredibly frightening about killing someone because they want to have a discussion. Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA organization was built on the premise that Americans can find each other through dialogue, that it is okay to disagree, that the way to avoid violence is through public discussion, through the airing of disagreements through words, not through violence. The aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination will ripple. There is a danger that there will be retaliatory attacks, that we will delve further into the violent path that has descended upon us. Charlie Kirk's assassination is not the first violent assassination that has happened this year. There have been attacks on politicians in the Democratic Party and in the Republican Party. There have been attacks on civilians. There has been an increasing amount of alarming violence. South Africa has had its own experience with alarming violence and continues to feel that. We are still enduring political attacks, mainly in KZN, but we ourselves stood on a precipice. When Chris Hani was assassinated, there was a collective gasp in the country. This was at a time when there were massive efforts to try and reconcile the tensions in the country, and there was a concern that we would descend into civil war. And we avoided that because there was a move towards forgiveness and reconciliation. And I hope that Americans are able to walk that path, that they're able to mend the schisms that they've had. And I hope that as South Africans who have our own schisms, that we are able to continue to avoid the resolution of disputes through violence, that we're able to use our democratic institutions, public dialogue, our courts, to resolve our differences instead of descending down the dark path of violence.
For South Africans listening, it wasn't abstract, it was personal. He gave international visibility to issues our own leaders sometimes brushed aside. In that sense, his voice traveled further than American borders. It connected ordinary people in small farming towns here to raging debates in Washington, D.C. At Utah Valley University, Charlie began speaking under a tent marked the American comeback. He barely got 20 minutes in. Then, gunfire. From a rooftop more than 90 meters away. There was panic. People were scattered. Security was caught off guard. The live stream is catching every terrifying second. The FBI called it a political assassination. Utah's governor and even Donald Trump echoed those words. We saw the confusion online. Reports of a suspect in custody, then the wrong guy not in custody. The videos of a man on a rooftop. The FBI apparently scrambling to reassure the public. And yet, the investigation drags on.
I was in Washington when I got the news that Charlie Kirk had been shot, and then later, of course, his death was confirmed. And it's a tragic event, and as we all know, and the tributes have already started to flood in, and I'm very happy to offer my own small, meager contribution to this. I had the great privilege of seeing Charlie Kirk in action at the last AmFest last year in Phoenix, and I was just super impressed with what this young man had been able to do in such a short period of time, and pulling together so many organizations. And animating, really exciting the youth in the country. And I think the best interview I ever heard of him was the one he recently did with Tucker Carlson. And I really encourage everyone to watch and listen to that interview, because Charlie Kirk's warning to the political class, this sort of senior political class on the right particularly, should be taken note of, because I think his greatest legacy is going to be as a kind of a prophet, warning about the future for this younger generation, that if the political class which governs the country does not take into account the needs and the challenges that the younger generation is facing, whether it's starting a family or building a home or having a decent career that pays, that can keep up with inflation and the high cost of living. And until the political class really addresses these fundamental economic issues, then this youth vote is going to be very volatile, because the same people that helped elect Donald Trump on an economic, populist, nationalist type of message of America first, this same group will be very happy to vote for the other way if they don't believe that their cries are being heard. And so I think I really hope people will go back and listen to that interview and really take to heart the message Charlie had, because he was speaking. He wasn't just smart in being able to understand what the the political climate is all about today. He was genuinely concerned about this young generation. And this is someone who has spoken to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young people and heard the frustration and seen the challenges up close that they face, and have spoken out on it so forcefully and tried to get the people in Washington, the people on the local level, even to listen and to pay attention. So he really was an excellent spokesman for his generation. He's attacked because of his conservative politics, but really Charlie was as a realist in understanding where we are today, where the nation's youth are, and where they're suffering, and where the challenges are. And he had the guts, and he had the insight in how to deal with it. And he was just 31 years old when he died. He was a young man, and he understood this. And so I think these older guys need to listen to the youth. They need to listen to these younger voices who not just know how to use the technology very well. And Charlie knew how to use it very well, and he knew how to message very well. But I hope they listen to his heart, because his heart was very much bleeding, if you will, for those who are left behind in the American dream, those who are not getting an opportunity that their parents had because of the cost of living, the cost of housing, the terrible job market in terms of paying a living wage because of real wage suppression, and the crisis of illegal immigration, which helps drive those wages down and shuts a lot of people out of a formerly lucrative job market. So Charlie understood his generation. Charlie spoke for his generation, and Charlie gave a formula for helping the political class understand the youth, because so oftentimes they're considered irrelevant in terms of politics. But this is your future. This is our future, and we need to pay attention. He also was a man of deep faith, and that came through in all of his talks. He was a family man. He didn't just preach the importance of getting married and starting a family. He actually did it. And he leaves behind a wife and 2 small children, which are heartbroken right now. So we need to say prayer for them. And we need to be grateful that we had men like Charlie Kirk, who had courage and were smart and knew how to articulate their beliefs, but do it in a way that was very winsome and optimistic and very charitable. He just sat down with Gavin Newsom, of all people. He was able to listen. And the reason why people like Gavin Newsom sat down with him is because they understood just how he had his hand on the pulse of the youth. And that is the future. So our prayers go out to Charlie's family, and also for our country as we struggle at a time of which will hopefully be a wake-up call on many levels.
The reaction has been as divided as Charlie's career. For conservatives, this was a martyrdom, and it was proof that speaking the truth comes at a cost. For critics, it's a chilling escalation of rhetoric that has turned to violence. What does it mean when political debate is settled with bullets instead of words? When does attending a speech become a risk to your life? And in South Africa, we don't ask those questions in theory. We know that assassinations actually happen. From political rivals in municipalities to whistleblowers and corruption scandals, we've seen it up close. We know how it corrodes a democracy.
Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in England. Horrific events unfolded yesterday, September 10th, 2025. Ironically, just hours before the anniversary of the ghoulish 13th century assault on America on September 11th, 2001, just a day prior. At Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah, conservative commentator and activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated shot in the neck, little chance of survival, but miraculously, at least according to media reports this morning, he was shot at 12:20 and was not pronounced dead until 4:45 or 4:44. He clung to life for nearly 4 hours, no doubt. If he was cognizant that he was lucid, he probably, no doubt, tried to stay alive for his family. This sort of political violence has no place in a civilized society. America's gone through spats of this in the early part of the 20th century with anarchists. We've gone through it with radical racists in the 1960s on both sides of the aisle. And of late, it's come back ever since the resurgence of the political left under Barack Hussein Obama, who said he would fundamentally change America, and he has. It has become a country that is extremely polarized, one before where the middle was where most people found themselves. Now many people find themselves on the far right or the far left. Those of us in the center or center right who are rational, cogent, lucid human beings are dismayed at what's happening, dismayed at our poor law enforcement, dismayed at the courts that allow murderers to run free and no cash bail, and the excusals for people of color committing crime because of supposed past injustices, even when these are people who aren't even American citizens, who are criminal alien invaders. On the passing of Charlie Kirk, before he passed, I said that should he survive, his ticket is punched to do whatever, the sky's the limit. If, unfortunately, he were to pass away, which has happened, he will become a martyr for the conservative cause. Whoever did this just ensured that the Republicans will win the midterms in the House of Representatives and retain control of the Senate, most likely. This will have reverberations for many, many years. While Charlie Kirk is not the same sort of national figure that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was, nonetheless, for those who followed him and the millions of people who supported him in the center, on the right, and even some on the left, this will not sit well. My concern is that some people will take the time to do something inappropriate. Now is not the time for violence, nor was yesterday. Now is the time for law enforcement to get engaged and get it done. It's absolutely a miracle, considering, if you saw the horrific video, which I did, that he survived at all. I understand that his security team, which was close by, immediately applied pressure and was able to transport him to the hospital, and that played a large role in keeping him alive as long as he did, till a surgical team could get to him. This is not something any society should have to endure. And my deepest concern is for people I don't even know, his wife, his daughter, and his son. Watching a video last night of Charlie Kirk recently on a morning show, his little daughter, 2-year-old daughter, "Daddy, Daddy," running over to him, jumping into his arms, nothing but unconditional love. And a son who will never know him, just a year old. Charlie Kirk sought to engage people. He was not a revolutionary. He was not a radical. He was not a right-wing extremist, which is the shameful press in the United Kingdom and the United States and South Africa portraying him as. He was a right-of-center person of faith, deeply religious, a conservative, who believed conservative values. And he put himself at risk. He went out to engage people. "Prove Me Wrong" was the name of the tour that he did so many times. And people seldom prove Charlie Kirk wrong. And that, folks, is why he was assassinated. You see, segments of society don't want cogent conversation. They don't want citizens engaged in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in South Africa. They want to demonize people who don't agree with their ghoulish worldviews. And they'll do whatever they can, destroy their reputation, falsely accuse them of things, use AI to generate fake things about them, identity theft to make fake profiles to piss people off, cancel them, call them racists, get in South Africa, the South African Captured Human Rights Commission after them, in America, sue them, and ultimately attack them or murder them. I read a Sky News UK news report earlier today. It's disgusting. They talk about the prevalence of political violence in America in recent years. And at every instance, they mention a Democrat that was attacked. Even though Democrats are in the minority, most of the political assassinations, attempt assassinations, and attacks on political figures in the past several years have been on Republicans. The baseball game where Steve Scalise was crippled, Rand Paul being beaten with a hammer at his door at home, Donald Trump, 2 assassination attempts that we're publicly aware of, and Sky News had the audacity to call them alleged assassination attempt. What exactly was Crooks doing in Butler sending a well-wish with a painted bullet and a ribbon on it at Donald Trump, alleged assassination attempts. You're a disgraceful outfit, Sky News in the UK. You bring shame to Sky News Australia. And this assassination of Charlie Kirk. Folks, we can't tolerate these people in our midst. Every country has laws, and we must deal with them. Now, of course, the immediate response from political left, and people are going to say, oh, it's just a few. It's not just a few. Dowd on MSNBC, his initial reaction was, well, we don't know if this is one of his supporters in a moment of joy firing off a gun. What? Smart-ass comments. And then blaming Charlie Kirk for his assassination. And the governor, Pritzker, of Illinois, blaming Donald Trump for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We don't know who did it, but I lay odds it's not someone who shares his political views. That doesn't seem hard to figure out. BBC having a commentator saying that Charlie Kirk wasn't well loved. That's an absolute bunch of nonsense. I didn't love him deeply, but I respected his views and his ability to persuade people. But he was well loved. And they can tell all lies they want, but it doesn't change reality. The massive number of TikTok and X videos out there of leftists joyful, running their mouth. Someone here in England I'm putting on Facebook, why isn't that person being arrested? You get arrested for saying anything in this country. That person said, well, at least now he's shut his mouth. Can you believe the ghoulish behavior? These are sick people in our society, and they must be excised from society. And the way you do that is identify them and shame them, and then ostracize them and stay away from them. And a few final thoughts here about the situation. My heart breaks. I spent 36 and a half years in uniform supporting the right of Americans to free speech. It appears as if Charlie Kirk was murdered because he exercised his God-given natural right of free speech. A genuine, true society can never accept this conduct. And in the words of the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, he wanted to make people aware that Utah still has a death penalty. Thank goodness for that. Charlie Kirk, 31 years of age, martyred, assassinated. Fair winds and smooth sailing, Charlie.
Charlie Kirk leaves behind a complicated legacy. To some, he was a brave defender of values that modern culture tried to erase. To others, he was a provocateur that thrived on outrage. But here's what is undeniable. He mattered. His voice reached millions. He mobilized the young. He challenged the status quo. And maybe that's the point that we should reflect on. What legacy do we want to leave? One of silence and conformity, or one of conviction, even when it's unpopular? Because if Charlie's death teaches us anything, it's that words are powerful, powerful enough to inspire, powerful enough to divide, powerful enough to threaten those who fear them. Cut down far too young, Charlie's life is now over. The questions he raised, the debates that he sparked, they are not. They continue with us. They continue with you. They continue with every student, every voter, every young person who dares to stand up and speak. And you should dare to stand up and speak. That's how you know you're really free. Let's not let violence have the last word. This is Gareth Cliff for The Truth Report. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.